You're good.
All right, I want to welcome everybody to Ironside Minyan over here. Get started. Wanted to focus in on only two Pesukim today. One is in Parashat Shemot, and one is in this week's Parashat Vaera. Something very, very interesting that if we look at it, we're studying something in the Torah that happened thousands of years ago. I'm going to prove it to you that it's happening today. It's happening today in everybody's life. Everybody. The pasuk starts with "Vayimariu et chayem ba'avoda kasha," and they made their lives bitter with hard work. And the pasuk continues and finishes with "Asher avadu bahem bePah Rech," and we're introduced to this word Pah Rech, hard work. Point of slavery. I'm going to focus on this word Pah Rech. What's Pah Rech? How did the Jews get there? You have to keep in mind that the Jews were a welcomed guest in Egypt. They were welcomed. They were wanted in the land of Egypt. And then we come into Sefer Shemot and they deteriorate from a welcomed citizen to a slave. How does it happen? How did that process, how did it all begin? So, they say that it was a different Paro that came into the picture, or it's the same one, but just had a different outlook on things. And basically, he's, to get a feeling of how all this started, we can go to the last pasuk of Parashat Vayigash. It says over there, the Jewish peoples, once they were invited into Egypt, they settled in Goshen, in Mitzrayim. It says, the last pasuk says that they were given the plot of land of Goshen, or Goshna, and then the pasuk ends that they lived in Goshen, but they also lived in Mitzrayim. And that gave us a hint that what happened is that the Jewish people didn't stay in that area that was allotted to them. They started to go further out, into Mitzrayim. And it was noticeable that they were out of their neighborhood or out of their area because they started to excel. It says that they became very successful and they multiplied. So the common Egyptian that was selling something at the market would look to the right and would see a Jew selling something in the market and doing better than him and making a tremendous amount of money. And that's in all the different markets, whether it was selling spices or whether it was selling fabrics, whatever it is, they found that the Jew was excelling in their country, and it started to brew hatred. The Egyptians started to hate the Jews. Very similar to what happened in Germany in the time of the Holocaust. The Jews were welcomed, they were accepted, but at one point when they excelled in everything, they were the best banker, the best realtor, the best musician, the Germans couldn't handle it. So Sefer Shemot is the beginning of that. We see that, how did it all start? It started with the Egyptians not liking their guest. They didn't like the Jew anymore. Paro said, okay, well, let me mastermind this. How am I going to switch things around? So it goes like this. Paro says, I'm building 2 cities. I need some GCs. I need some general contractors. And he says, in a matter of fact, I'm going to offer $10 a brick. For every brick that you guys lay, I'm going to offer you the pay of $10 each. All the Jews jumped on it. Great deal. We're going to make a killing over here, a tremendous amount of money. And they all signed up for it, and they all started to make, it was such a good deal that they started to work very fast. They tried to get a lot of the job done as much as possible every single day, and they were making a lot of money. Some time passes. Paro comes back to the table and says, hey, listen, things are changing. I can't pay $10 anymore. I'm going to pay $5 a brick. They're looking like, hey, still good money, it's not bad. They continued, even though that it was half of what it was before, but they continued to do it. He came back some short time after that and lowered it to $1. now I'm only paying $1 per brick. Even though it was way less than when it started, it was still very profitable, and they continued to do it. In other words, he had a tactic going on. Eventually, it got to the point where he told the Jews, actually, you're going to continue to build my cities, but now I'm not paying you. And there's nothing that you can do about it because I'm the king and I'm going to enforce it. And here's that guy over there standing with the spear ready to take your life if you think otherwise. So now the Jews are scared for their life. Let's go back to that word Pah Rech. Word Pah Rech means hard work. But the rabbis tell us that you can read that word differently as well. Pah Rech can also be read as Peh Rach, a soft mouth or a soft approach or sweet talking. Paro at first came to them with a sweet suggestion. Come, help me build a city. I will pay you a lot. He was able to entice them. But later on, that Peh Rach turned into Pah Rech. It turned into hard work. He enticed them with something, and then it turned it into something else later on. I'll give you an example of another explanation to this word. Another time that you hear the word Peh Rach that's the Hebrew word for flour. Flour in Hebrew is Peh Rach. Do you know why a flower is called Peh Rach? It's called Peh Rach because when you speak nicely to the flower, it begins to bloom. If you talk or if you curse at the flower, if you yell at the flower, it starts to wilt. The hint, we have a hint in the name. When you say flower in Hebrew, Peh Rach, it's a hint. Talk to the flower. When you talk to the flower, it will bloom for you. Something very, very interesting. They made a study in Harvard University about 60, 70, or 80 years ago that if you talk to your plants, they'll grow. Right? It was like the biggest thing. Wow, start talking to your flowers. I just want you to know that we had that technology thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago in the time of Bet HaMikdash. For those of you that pray and know the Ketoret, there's a part over there that says that the Kohen used to take the spices and used to crush them. And when he used to crush the spices, you would say, Hadek, Hetev, Hetev, Hadek. You would talk to the spice. And then the Gemara tells us what's the reason for that? Ki hakol yafeh labesamim. The voice is pleasant to the spices. In other words, the spices come from flowers. When you talk to the flower, when you talk to the spices, it betters it. It improves it. Another hint to the word Peh Rach. Again, when you talk nicely to something. And that's how it started with Paro. Now, it got worse. At one point, Paro said, not only are you going to now build, and you're not going to get paid, but now I'd like for you to go and make the bricks. And then he took it one step further. He said, not only make the bricks, but go to the field and get the supplies. Because at that time, the way they used to make the bricks is they used to take straw, mud, put it together, cook it in an urn, so it forms a shape. And that's how they would make the bricks. Before, he just gave them the brick and they would build. Now, they had a quota. Every single day they had to do, let's say, 500 bricks. And as the work got harder and harder, meaning make the bricks, but you still got to do 500. Go collect the supplies for the bricks and make them and build, you still got to do 500. That's your quota for the day. That's never going to change. This is when they said that they gave him Avdotam Beparech. It's hard work, and it got worse and worse. So, let's just put that scenario on the shelf for 1 second, and I want to ask you a question. Have you had a scenario like that in your life? They say, the rabbis tell us that Mitzrayim is an example for people's... Have you ever had this type of scenario in your life? A lot of people sometimes, when they start a job, when they get hired, there's a scenario where the guy that's hiring you says, come, work for me, you'll move up in the company, you'll get promoted, you'll make a lot of money. And you say, oh wow, sounds good. Let me sign up. A few months down the road, he says, wow, things aren't expected. Some unexpected things have come up, and we're downsizing. And I'm gonna let some people go. I'm not gonna let you go, but I can't pay you the same. I gotta pay you less. A few months down the road, he says, not only I can't pay you less, but if I can't pay you less, then I'm gonna have to let you go. And you're like already stuck in the situation, and you say, okay, I'm gonna stay. And then basically, not only are you not moving up in the company, but you're earning less. And then the verbal abuse starts, and all of a sudden you're like, how did I get here? How did I get here? How did this situation happen? It started with a Pah Rech. Started that soft approach with the smooth talk, and later on it turned into Pah Rech. So the rabbis tell us, when it comes to Mitzrayim, the word Mitzrayim is your challenges, the things that you're wrestling with, the things that you're challenged with. Paro is the Yetzer Hara. When a person has hardships in his life, the Yetzer Hara is a key player in that. He's the one that's trying to give you the hard time. So let's take this example that we just used and see how it's found in everyday life. There's a lot of people that deal with a lot of problems, addictions, vices, personal problems, a lot of general hardships. I'll give you an example. The Yetzer Hara, or Paro, sometimes sneaks up on a person with alcoholism. He says, you know what, just go drinking, on the weekends. And then it starts off, just on special occasions. And then special occasions start, just on the weekends. Just on the weekends, just at nighttime when I go out. And all of a sudden, the guy is starting to drink during the day, drinking all week. Fast forward a year down the road, the guy says, I was just going to have a drink socially. Now I can't start my day without having a drink. How did that start? It's the Yetzer Hara, that power. He starts talking you into, just do this, and later on, you're doing something completely different. Also with drugs. A lot of people, nowadays, a lot of people are wrestling with the drug problem. It starts off, I just do it socially every once in a while, just with my friends, and then all of a sudden it deteriorates to just on the weekends. All of a sudden you see, a year later, a person doesn't know how to go out and have a good time unless his pocket is filled with a bunch of different drugs. He doesn't know how to have a good time anymore. You ask him to leave it, he's like, I can't. How did it happen? A year ago, Yetzer Hara was telling you, just socially, just have a good time, just with this group of friends. Not going to do it, not going to turn into a drug addict. Same tactic that Paro used with the Jews in Egypt for slavery. The same tactic that Yetzer Hara uses every day with everyone. And that's for general hardships also. A lot of times people have a lot of things that are that they're wrestling with, whether it's financial struggles, love issues, weight issues. Everybody's got their mitzrayim, and Paro is always, or the Yetzer Hara is always going to be the one who's going to try to take you out of it. Now, the rabbis tell us, just throw it in there, I'm just going to give the problem without a little bit of a solution. The rabbis tell us that there's something you can activate in prayer to help you with that. How did the Jews get redeemed in Egypt or saved in Egypt and Mitzrayim? Who was their savior? Moshe Rabbeinu. In our prayer, there's a special prayer when they got, the great escape. Where was Az Yashir Moshe, Shirat Hayam. We say it almost every day in our prayers, and we say it also on Shabbat. The rabbis tell us, if you just stop for a moment before that prayer and say, Hashem, this is my Mitzrayim. I'm wrestling with X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. I need help. In other words, crystallize what your Mitzrayim is. Tell him, I'm fighting my Paro. I'm fighting my Yetzer Hara. And imagine, and start to say the prayer of Az Yashir Moshe, and imagine as if you are actually going through the waters and coming out on the other side on dry land. They say if you can picture yourself doing that, it's a big Yeshua, big opportunity to get saved from something like that. Especially in a few weeks, we're going to have Az Yashir, the Shirat Hayam, actually is the parasha of the week. And they say on that week, because that week has a lot of, it's that spiral that we talked about in the past, there's a lot of energy available during that week for Geulah. They say on that week, stop for even a minute or two and have extreme concentration before you go there, because you can actually activate a lot of Yeshuot to get out of your personal mitzvah just by saying Shirat Hayam on its own. So here we are talking about Avodat Pah Rech, and this is now people are enslaved. And every time that there is a tragedy or some sort of war or famine, there's always someone that's benefiting from it. If there's famine, the guy that's selling rice is becoming a billionaire right now. If there's a war, the weapons dealer is making a tremendous amount of it. There's always someone that benefits from it. That there was one Jew in Egypt that became extremely rich during this time. Would you like to guess who it is? Who's a rich Jew that we know in Sefer Shemot? No, it's not him. It's Korach. Korach was a Levi. Levi was the only tribe that was not enslaved, because Yosef made it that any clergy, whether it's for Avodah Zarah or for the Jewish nation, they didn't have to work. He set it up like that before because he knew when the Jewish people were going to be enslaved that the Leviim should not work. So the Levites did not work. The Levi tribe was set aside on its own. They didn't work. But Korach, who was a Levi, opened up the first Home Depot. He opened up a storefront that sells bricks. Now remember, we said that the Jews had a quota. So if they didn't fill the quota, let's say they're at 433, they're missing 67 bricks, what would they do? They would go to Korach. They said, Korach, I need 67 bricks. He would sell them bricks, and they'd come back, fill their quota, and save their life. They get to live another day. And he did that to all the Jews. He made hand over fist for years. He became extremely wealthy. They said at the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim, he had close to 100 donkeys that were laden with sacks filled with keys just to the chests, the treasure chests or the money chests that belonged to him. Imagine just how many sacks of keys that belong to the actual chest that houses all the money that belonged to him, or jewels. Korach. Later on, we'll see that Korach challenged Moshe, and there's a whole story there. We'll visit it when we get to it. But I thought it was an interesting fact. I read it from Me'am Loez, which was a midrash on this parasha, that Korach was the first Home Depot that sold bricks to the Jews. At the same time, he was helping save lives, but at the same time, he got rich. I'm going to finish up with this. There's one other point. If you go to this week's parasha, it says over there, "Vaydaber Moshe ken el bnei Yisrael, velo shamu el Moshe mikotzer ruach u'me'avodah kasha." We're going to fast forward about 80 years into them being slaves, and Moshe comes back into the picture and says, "Hey, Hashem sent me. I'm here to save you. Good news." And you know what they say? "No, I can't hear you." They didn't have any patience. It says the word over there, it says mikotzer ruach. Kotzer is shortness, ruach is breath, spirit, neshama. So out of their shortness of breath or shortness of spirit, or their impatience with the whole situation, they weren't able to listen to it. Why? From the Avodah Kasha, they were slaves. They were working hard. They just couldn't hear it. They weren't open to it. So it's very interesting, because there's a different way that we can explain this. Moshe comes with positive news. It says, "Vaydaber Moshe ken." Ken is a positive word, yes. And they reply to him, "El bnei Yisrael, lo," is negative. In other words, Moshe comes to deliver some positive news, something that can help them out in every way, physically and spiritually. And they weren't willing or able to listen to it because they weren't open to it. Their neshama had a short circuit, a short fuse. Anytime somebody would want to talk to them about spirituality or want to talk to them about anything that could better their life, they weren't able to listen to it. They were impatient about it. And they said the reason for that was hard work. Okay. So, listen to this. Listen to how we can interpret this. It says over there, mikotzer ruach. Kotzer ruach is, when you try to tell somebody, I'll give you an example. A lot of times, there's people, when you tell them, hey, why don't you come to a class with me? Leave me alone. I don't have time. I got to work. You tell me, you know what? There's an incredible speaker here on Wednesday night. Come, I really want you to hear what he has to say. I'm too tired. I'm overworked. It's my 14-hour work day. What happens? Their spirituality is short. They can't. The minute you want to talk about spirituality, it's like a little short circuit that they get in their neshama. And the reason that they give you right away? Hard work. I'm tired. I'm overworked. I can't. I'm busy. I don't have the headspace for it. So what you have to understand is that Jews, we are people of the book. We are spiritual people. We're not put onto this planet so we could be the biggest millionaires and the most successful people in real estate, or the most successful people in the car dealerships, or the most successful people in Hollywood. That's not what we were put on this planet. We are spiritual people. That's what we're concerned with. Remember what happened in Mitzrayim? The Egyptians were looking at you like, why are you so successful in my world? Your world is different. You're supposed to be over there. You're supposed to be in the yeshiva studying. That's you. That's why we loved you. That's why we let you be there, because you were being you. Now you're being me. I can't accept that. So the Goyim, this is their world, to be materialistic, to be into worldly things, to be into the mundane. And the Jew is supposed to be the spiritual. So there's a whole machloket in the Gemara. What should a Jew do? Should he sit in a yeshiva all day long and study? Or should he go out there and work? So they went back and forth, and they find out that the truth is, it's a combo. It's the 50-50. A Jew actually needs to learn and to work. Because a Jew that just studies doesn't really work. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody succeeded at that option. So they came out with the thing that the Jew has to go out there into the world and work, just like everybody else. The ones that are able to sit in yeshiva all day long, God bless them. But those are a select few. There's just a few that can, may they multiply by the millions, but not everybody can pull that off. But however, if you are out there in the world, you still are obligated to pray, to study. So it's like a healthy diet, a 50-50 type of thing. Now, don't get me wrong. You have to go out there and support your family, make a living, have savings, have a home, have food, have cars, have all that. But we're talking about when a Jew gets to the point of excess, when he needs that multi-million-dollar mansion, and needs that fifth car, and needs that summer home. That's already excess. Okay? That's not what the Jew is here for. We're not telling you to stop working or to do what's right. Just what we're saying over here is that when a person loses that healthy diet of 50-50, when he becomes all overworked. So let's take a look. When a person has like a 70-30, meaning 70% of his life is work and 30% is spiritual. So it looks like this. If this is 50-50 and 70 takes over, so the spirituality part becomes a little bit small. Or 80-20 or 90-10. Imagine the spiritual side becomes so small that every time that you give up that spirituality, then that gap over there forms a void. And that void needs to get filled. How does it get filled? It needs to get filled with something else. And the first thing that usually creeps up on that spiritual void, that space that is no longer filled with spirituality, is work, money, sex, food. That's the first thing that jumps in right now. Let me fill it up like that. Now, when it does that, you become less spiritual. The minute you become less spiritual, anything that has to do with spirituality, the minute you start to talk about it, that's part of you starts to resist. Starts to have a little short circuit, a little resistance. I can't, I'm tired, I'm overworked, it's not for me, I don't have the headspace. Where does that come from? Because you gave up that real estate. You gave up that real estate to your neshama and your soul. And because you gave up that space, something else took over. So, when it says over there, mikotze ruach, with shortness of spirituality and ma'avodah kasha. When the Jewish people as slaves had a shortness of spirituality, the first thing that took over there was hard work. Now over there we can say, hey, they're slaves. What do you want from them? They're slaves. I can say, okay, that's understandable. But what about us? Are we slaves? 2017, are we slaves? Can we use that excuse? Can we say, listen, Paro's got me over here with a spear over my head. If I'm not going to lay 500 bricks today, I'm gone. Can you say that? Or can you say that honestly you can have a 50-50 die of work for a certain amount of time and the spirituality fulfilled so you can feel your neshama? For example, spirituality would be shul in the morning, a class that we're doing right now, reading a book, feeding the neshama. And when it comes to work, you come, you do your ishtadlut. You come, you do your 8 hours. Sometimes you do a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. They say anybody who works more than they have to, it's a lack of emunah. If you don't believe that Hashem is going to give you exactly what you need at the exact amount of time that you're working, and you have to put in more hours, don't get me wrong, there are times when it's necessary, but when a person says, I work 14-hour days every day, otherwise I won't make money, that's a lack of emunah. You have to believe that Hashem is providing for you, and like that, you don't rob yourself of that spirituality. And the answer always is when you talk about shul, class, book, studying, I'm tired, I'm overworked, I can't handle it. I'm going to finish with this. This is such an interesting point that I heard. Somebody sent me over this little tablet, this little graph that says, did you know that a person uses only 30% of the functions in his car? Did you know that when people buy or overbuy, like for example, when somebody buys a mansion, let's just say he doesn't need all that space. They say people that buy homes, extravagant homes, never use more than 30% of that home. 70% is wasted. The rich never spend more than 30% of their entire riches. 70%, when they're in the grave, is still in the bank account. They work, and in the end, they never even use it. So imagine, the car, the home, and the bank account, only 30% of it is used. But how much of your life was used to acquire all that? What are we saying here? I know I'm in a room filled with businessmen and lawyers. Maybe you don't want to hear that. But the truth is, it's about being spiritual and less about being a slave to the grind. Shabbat Shalom.